Welcome to Imperial Interlude. Last week there was no, because we chose so. Live with it.
Life got in the way, I think, wasn't it?
Yeah, more or less. But that's not the topic we're here to discuss today. Today we're here to discuss the episodes, what was it?
Decommissioned,
Decommissioned and
the new one, which is Battle Scars.
yeah,
So it's episodes
6 and
6 and
7.
7.
Yeah,
Almost halfway through.
almost not quite yet, but we are getting to things that we both told each other, and we can now say, "Yeah, told you so."
Definitely. Should we give them the big warning? Shall we again?
Spoiler alert ahead.
That's
First
the one.
and final warning. If you haven't watched The Bad Batch Series 1, Episode 6 and 7, turn off this podcast, watch the episodes, come back. You're welcome. Spoiler warning, ending.
Yeah. And if you haven't watched them, why not?
if you haven't watched it, why are you listening this podcast? So the first episode called Decommissioned was, I think, a very straightforward, you are now serving this weird reptile lady to make ends meet.
Yeah.
Also, it really reminded me very much of the A-Team, which has been a sort of a meme since last episode.
Yeah. It was also the episode as well, that one where you sort of got the beginning with them sort of not fixing, but Omega practicing with her bow, as well as it being tweaked a little bit, I think.
Yeah, target
things
practice.
Going on, wasn't it, in the bar while they were then Sid giving them the sort of the job of speaking to, I can't remember what her nickname is for Hunter, but she has a nickname for all of them.
I can't remember as well. Well, she tells them that she needs the intel that is stored in an old what's its face tactical droid from the clone army, which are currently all being decommissioned and scrapped.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, they're sent to a scrapyard to steal an old robot.
And we got to see a planet that we've only seen once before as well in this one.
In a vast galaxy of unending space, just one reoccurring. Yeah.
Yeah. So because they went to Corellia for this one, that's where they were told where the scrap area was going to be, which is interesting because we've only ever seen Corellia once before, and that was in Solo.
Yeah, but we got told of Corellia.
Often. I mean, we all know of Corellia. You know, it was just interesting. That's the only second time that has actually appeared physically, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, as a real location and not just a piece of lore.
Yeah.
So the beginning of the episode is rather quick and dirty. They get the job. They have a little banter between themselves, and then they're off to Corellia and land on this scrapyard site, what you ever want to call it.
I mean, in the bar as well, it was interesting when Sid grabs the bow to use, because Omega's practicing with it and isn't very good. She's learning. But then Sid grabs it and goes and fires 3 shots almost perfectly.
Yeah, it's your arm's too weak.
Yeah.
You need to practice. I think shows that Sid is more than we are made to believe she is currently.
Definitely that character's more than what we think the character is. You know, there's
the potential of a larger backstory.
Oh yeah, there's multiple dimensions, and I think that's the same with all of even the clones, even the Bad Batch. I think, you know, we know from Dave Filoni's writing, you know, whether it be in The Mandalorian or being Clone Wars or being with the Bad Batch, he layers his characters.
Yeah, it almost feels like he's unable to make a one-dimensional character.
Yeah, which is good, because characters aren't one-dimensional, are they really?
Usually they're not. No.
Yeah, but it depends on the TV you're watching, of course. But they end on Coronet anyway, or they go to Coronet City anyway. That's where they end up. disembarking when they sort of get past the Empire.
Yeah.
They get past the blockade or whatever it is in the shipyard or things, and then they land at Coronet City.
And I think the junkyard where they're scrapping all the droids, is swirling with, what did they call them?
Police droids.
Police droids.
Mm-hmm.
At first, I thought they looked a lot like the old droid that was beneath Jabba's palace, but then they turned their head and it looked much more like the HK assassin droid.
Yeah, they've changed the design slightly because we have seen police droids in the Clone Wars on Coruscant, with a couple of the stories that happened in there with with the sort of the local authorities turning up with the Jedi in the Senate and stuff. So
Well,
the design is slightly different, but that's
I'm guessing there will be multiple iterations of droids like there are cars today. You get one model from different year and it looks totally different.
Yeah, they also have different roles as well, because you've got your spaceport patrol one, which is the one that we saw, but there's also like a Guardian one, which looks like a protocol droid with a blue flashing light on its head. So it's the standard thing. Different droids, different. There's lots of different types of R2 unit. There's or
Astromech
droids.
R3,
Yeah,
R4, R2.
Yeah. So it's the standard thing in the Star Wars universe, but they managed to avoid those to get into the decommissioning plant.
Yeah, the actual factory where they're melting down all the things.
And that's when it starts getting.
Well, at first they are looking after where are the tactical droids stored, and like a very bad writing from an episode of A-Team, there's just one left. Only one little droid they can capture.
I think as well as is this the thing within this as well, where Wrecker's still having his issues.
Yeah, he's still having headaches from time to time.
Yeah, which is it leads into
later
things that are coming on in the episode, but they're
the
definitely
following
playing
episode.
On that.
Yeah. So they are making their way to the the other way around. They start looking for that droid, and Omega, who is left behind on a junction somewhere, spots him on a conveyor belt and says, "I've got him." And there she meets some masked lady.
Or masked figure.
Yeah. A person with a female voice.
Definitely, yes. And then there's the who was also after the tactical droid.
Yeah, who would have thunk?
Definitely. But then there's there's so Echo says she's offloaded the droid onto, or she's located it. And then comes across this person. And then there's a sort of a little bit of a scrabble around the head, with Omega grabbing it, whatever. And also then Hunter, I think, comes across one as well, or is that more to do with?
No, I think Hunter comes a bit later with the other figure, just after all hell breaks loose because they are spotted and the alarm is triggered.
Yes. But that is so they are. There's this sort of Hunter tells Omega to stay out of sight, but when Omega sees the head, she goes after it, and then Omega, of course, tries to intervene and get the head, and that's where she comes across the figure who reveals themselves, because Omega's holding the crossbow up, to tell her to drop the head or whatever, and of course, the figure says, when revealing themselves, says, they're not going to hurt her, and that's revealed to be Rafa Martez, which is interesting because I didn't think we would see that character again.
Well, so much for thinking.
So much for thinking, exactly. For people who aren't or don't remember where Rafa Martez turned up, her and her sister turned up in the 4 episodes, which we could probably loosely call Ahsoka's Walkabout.
Yeah, it's basically the episodes where Ahsoka is leaving the Jedi Order, and
Yeah,
those two help her more or less on her way to get out.
yeah.
She literally crashes with her speeder bike into their uh, workshop, and then they do stuff together.
And then, as Omega's accosting Rafa, her comlink goes and it's traced. So both sisters are there, saying that she has, that she's gotten the target and asking where Rafa is. Omega tells them not to answer as she draws the crossbow. Trace asks Rafa what's going on, and there's a bit of dialogue between those two.
Yeah,
Then Trace runs down some steps and runs into the other clones who called her at gunpoint. So we have Rafa with Omega and Trace with the rest of the clones.
yeah, with Hunter and oh, what's his
Tech and
face?
Echo.
Tech Echo is left behind because he's, if I remember correctly, trying to unlock the lockdown because they need to get out of the alerted factory.
Mm. Yeah. And then you've got Wrecker up top, but
Up top, being scared of heights again,
yes.
and having, I think, a bit of a, oh, my head hurts.
Yeah, I think he swings across or something, doesn't he? And sort of knocks his head and starts suffering from.
He's unconscious for
Yeah.
most of the time in this first half of the episode.
Yeah, and sort of having issues with his
Headaches.
with his headaches. So you've got those two elements going on, as well as then Hunter and one of the Martez sisters, go after the Rafa, go after the head. There's all this basically inside of the factory. There's lots of moving parts.
Yeah,
You've got
and
the you've it was
it's basically a giant game of fantasy football where the ball is the head, which is passed on between Omega and one of the sisters, and
yeah,
they go from one end to the other. And I think we can skip most of the fighting part because
yeah,
there isn't much to substance to it. I think the most interesting part is when Omega loses the head, the
yeah,
sister walks away, but Omega is trapped beneath an old android and is being drawn into a melting pit.
yeah. And then I've as she falls off the conveyor belt onto the second conveyor belt, which is where all the parts are, which is that melting pit thing, and Trace then helps her, sees that she's in trouble and goes to help her. The other interesting thing as well is when, after helping her, they're all together. So there's Trace and Rafa with the clones, if I remember correctly.
Mm.
There's more patrols coming in. We're still without Wrecker, of course, at the moment. But it's then when they're all together with Tech, sort of that way we cut to Wrecker, who starts hearing the same the same words, or repeats the same words Crosshair does as he starts to regain himself.
Yeah.
The good soldiers follow orders, so we can see that the chip is having a bigger effect on him than the other ones. But then it's also at that time as well, as they're calling for Wrecker, that it's either Tech or Echo, have the idea of, because there's an army coming after them of droids,
They need another army.
They need another army, so they decide to use the tactical droid and enable the decommissioned separatist droids to attack the police.
Yeah, and at that point, I had a big wait a minute moment. I get if the larger battle droids who had their armament within their arms are still armed, but where the fuck did the other droids get their weapons?
Yeah, there was a little bit like, huh? I could understand the B2s having their weapons.
Yeah,
And
they were
even
literally in their arms, but
yeah.
I couldn't find. And I wanted to go back to the episode and rewatch it to see if the guns were actually laying around on the conveyor belts, but I forgot to do so, and I'm guessing they could be, but I'd say they weren't.
We could sort of pull a very tenuous thread and say they picked them off the drowned police droids.
Yeah, but the police droids weren't scattered around the conveyor belt, and
Very true.
they get up from the conveyor belt and are already armed, which is a bit of annoying. But yeah, skipping that, it's a children's movie.
it's a children's movie. So yes, and then as they awaken the droids, of course they get the army, and Wrecker turns up, of course, as well, joins them.
Finally having some fun again.
Yeah, finally having some fun again, but also seems to be out of his not in his good soldiers follow orders sort of guise, or that hasn't kicked in. But it's basically, it was a way of getting them all back together again, and in the confusion of the gunfight, they all head to basically the sister's ship to get away.
Yeah, and on the way there, they are stumbling and losing the head of the command droid, which is terrible because it was the last one.
It was, but as they get away and land, Hunter speaks to the sisters to hands over a copy of the information in the droid's head to Rafa.
Yeah,
that they go after.
Which is the second plot point that really struck me as being weird, because if the copy is enough for the sisters to get their job done, why didn't they copy that copy again? To have something for their own?
But I think the job that they were asked was a retrieval of a head, not the information.
No, the job was the information, because when they started, Sid said the information this unit store are very valuable to people that are not in the Empire. So it's basically just the information that is what they're all after. So why can't they copy that again? I don't know. Maybe it's a special memory stick with a large capacity. I don't know.
It's a plot hole, but as we all know, it's
a plot hole, but with a purpose.
Yeah, I was going to say, is if you're 8-year-old watching this, you're not going to really pay much attention to it, are you?
It's something you think about after the fact the episode has aired, and it doesn't detract too much from the actual enjoyment of the episode. So basically, our friends from the B team get back home empty-handed, and the sisters do a mysterious call to a hologram that is not shown, and they are giving away the whereabouts of the B team.
It's more the fact that if we know of some rogue clones that might be useful for you.
Yeah, it smells of treason.
It does. Who did you think it was? Because I think we know who it was from the second episode, but who did you think it was when you first saw it?
I actually was thinking about who popped up in the second episode.
I thought it might have been Bail Organa.
If it had been Bail Organa, I think they would have shown him.
The other one that I saw online, which I didn't think was Ahsoka.
then they wouldn't have showed the part of the leg they showed from the figure in the hologram.
I thought it was the side, actually. I thought it was the arm shoulder bit.
Could also be, but nonetheless,
Yeah.
Ahsoka would have been too memorable, too much noticeable details. They couldn't have hit her identity in that shot too well.
True. I mean, the other one that I did think about was a Fett or Fennec Shan.
Yeah, that would be a possibility, but
You know, when we think about treason, shall we say, or having the double cross,
yeah.
you know.
But given the fact that they were established as good characters within the lore of the Clone Wars, I think it would have been a far stretch if they had actually betrayed the clones to anyone with a not so honest to good thing of a state of mind. Let's put it that way.
Very true. But so the episode sort of ended, as we know, with the way that that you know, it was you know, where we talk about episodes and we talk about, you know, you have filler episodes and story progression episodes almost. Yeah, this was definitely a progression episode, I think, because
Yeah.
it was laying a lot of the foundation for the following episode, especially to do with Wrecker.
Yeah, because simply the reiteration of him getting worse and worse headaches and starting to mutter words you don't want to hear from your fellow comrades.
Especially that fellow comrade. he might act like an overgrown child sometimes, but I don't think he is.
No,
You know,
especially not strength-wise.
Not strength-wise, definitely not. But then the following week, which is this week's episode, was called Battle Scars.
Yeah, which is, in hindsight, a dead giveaway.
Yes. But it could mean lots of different things though as well, couldn't it?
Yeah, it actually could. So we start off, if I remember correctly, again in Sid's shop. Sid being a wee bit annoyed.
No, there's a scene before that, which is the lizard in the cage that they have on the ship that they're being pursued by, where they're being basically pursued by 3 gunships. The lizard gets out, causes a bit of havoc. The hyperdrive's not working, and we find out that they
were on a job for Sid again and are returning home with the bounty.
Yeah. So they stole this Rokai. They stole the Rokai. The Rokai stole the lizard, and they stole it back from the Rokai. So they were claiming the lizard, shall we say?
They are still trying to stay on the right side of the law.
Yeah, and of course Omega's named the lizard,
as children do.
Yeah. So yes, so the lizard jumps in Wrecker's face during that as well, causing Beast frightened a bit, get it off.
Which again is a bit weird, given the fact that he had fought a Rancor baby.
Yeah, you know. And then she tells him to calm down because it scares the lizard. The lizard falls off his face, or he hits something and jumps off his face, and then she turns the cage around, catches the lizard just as they head into hyperspace. And then we cut to Sid's shop.
Yeah, where Sid is handing out the what do you call it? The bounty, their part of the share.
That payment.
Payment, quote unquote. Which is not so much, and Hunter is a bit annoyed and says, "You promised us much more," and she's giving him numbers of what they are spending on her behalf, and she wants back.
Yeah, but then prior to them going in to get payment, we see Hunter noticing the patrons around, and there's a new patron in the bar, a hooded figure.
He struck me a bit like in Lord of the Rings when the hobbits first encounter Aragorn.
Yeah,
it's the cloaked figure in the corner sitting.
It is, yeah.
Trope.
It's a little bit of the Highlander quickening sense as well, because Hunter sort of stops and just scans slowly. You know, it's like, ooh, there's another mortal around here somewhere. But also that's the time when we get Omega and Wrecker wanting to leave, ask permission to leave.
Because tradition.
Tradition, yes. So then, you know, they go in the back where where Sid goes through all of these things. You know, there should have been more money. Why isn't it? So basically, the debt they owe her, and it's, you know, it's debt. It's, you know, docking fees, port charges, gear,
The
fuel,
usual
rations.
stuff crooks tend to put on your tab if you're
Exactly,
not
and then
paying
20 cartons of Martell mix, and then it cuts to the market where
to the
that's
two
what
children.
Omega and Rekka are doing, is getting basically what looks like popcorn.
Yeah, some sweet candy stuff.
Yeah, it's tradition after the mission.
Yeah, and
But
the vendor asks for payment, and Rekka just says, "Put it on Sid's tab." So
yeah,
that's where we know where there 20 cartons
where
of
the
sweets come from.
and then we cut into the bar where the other two, the Weequay and the Elthorian, are basically get up and start hassling the stranger,
Yeah,
saying they're in his drink.
which is very weird for me to have the Ithorian with this weird headgear speaking basic and not just going on
Like
his
the
mumbling.
universal translator.
It looks a bit weird, but seems to work.
And then we go, as that sort of escalates a bit, we cut back to Sid telling Hunter, Echo, and Tech that she needs them to, you know, that she's not running a charity, and tells them they need a big score in order to get even. And that goes back around to the tactical droid conversation. So that's still hanging in the air.
Yeah.
And then we hear blaster shots. Or no, Sid says something about, warns them about seeing their ugly side. And that's where Tech
her
quips
ugly
about,
side, yeah.
yes.
And
Text quips about her ugly side, which I thought was quite funny.
Yeah, well, was
That's
a bit
not
of
an
a
ugly side,
meanie.
I think he said. But then we get the blaster. We get the blaster shots as they all come rushing out. Basically the patrons are legging it out the way.
Yeah, they seem to be in a hurry all of a sudden.
Yes, and the hooded stranger stands up, rests his weapon on the table, and reveals himself to be Rex.
Yes, and this is the point where you can say, "I told you so."
Going back when you first see him, because you first see the hooded figure and you see the hand raise as he's taking his drink, that's when I noticed who it was, because you could see the glove, you could see the gauntleted hand.
Yeah.
And you could see the colouring on it, even though it was in shadow. You could see the blue with the especially the markings on the back of the hand, where, you know, he's marking off his kills, isn't he?
Mm.
He's doing that, you know, that strike through thing. So you could see who it was.
Doesn't he do that on his helmet?
He does it everywhere.
Okay.
It's on the back of his gauntlet. It's on the helmet and stuff. But his helmet's different than other helmets as well. It's actually a phase 1 and a phase 2 helmet merged together. Because when you get a closer look at Rex's helmet, and you do in this episode, around sort of the bridge of the nose and down the mouthpiece, there's this sort of red line, isn't there?
Yeah.
That's the weld. It's the welding line that he's put in from his helmet being basically a phase 1 and a phase 2 merged together.
Yeah, and I think at that point, Omega and Rekka also join the party again.
Yeah.
And Omega is a bit irritated because she asked, "But I think you said you don't like Regs." Speaking
goes,
with the soft G, and they don't take the time to explain that his name is Rex, not just Reg.
Yeah, but then it's the line from Sid as well, saying, "This isn't a clone clubhouse."
Yeah, he seems to be really annoyed to getting so much attention from runaway clones.
Well, it would bring down, I guess, heat on them, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
And then we find out Rex has been listed as killed in action.
Yeah, which is odd.
No, because I think they believe from the Imperial files, it depends what Vader did, from the end of Clone Wars. Remember that the Venerator class crashed, didn't it?
Yeah, where we had this very touching scene where Ahsoka has buried all the clones.
Exactly. So they probably the assumption would have been from the Empire that he was in amongst that lot.
Possible.
And then, of course, we get, this is before Omega and Rekka turn up, of course. We find out that it was Trace and Rafa who spoke to Rex about them.
Yeah.
So that leads into the last episode where we the speculation about who it could have been. Well, yeah, it was Rex.
Yeah.
And then of course Hunter explains the kid is Omega and that she's a clone like them, and that's when Wrecker and Omega arrive. Wrecker recognizes Rex, gives him a hug, and that's where Omega says about I thought you didn't like
he
Rex.
asks Jack for another medkit because of his headaches.
Yeah,
And
we'll
at
get to
that point, Rex is getting very nervous.
Rex starts to stand slowly up because when Rex has his headache. But also, what's interesting is he kneels down to greet Omega, and she stares at him and goes, "You're a Gen 1."
Yeah. How could you
Identified
tell? The lines on your face.
the lines
Basically,
of-
he's telling him, you look old.
But it's interesting that she's able to tell the generation of clones.
Well, if you're raised on a cloning facility, I'm guessing that's a feature you're having.
Oh yeah,
You
It'll be a
just
feature, but-
take with everything else there.
Yeah, but I've got a suspicion that's going to be something that may be explained, or I don't think it's thrown away, possibly.
No, possibly not, but I wouldn't think too much of it about it.
No, not
either
at the
way.
moment. Not at the moment. And then, of course, as Rekka starts with his head complaining about that, Rex stands and basically tells them that they need to get the chips out.
Yeah, he gets even more nervous when he learns that they all still have their chips inside their heads.
Which I thought was interesting because I didn't think Echo had a chip.
I don't think Echo is part of this discussion because he was so badly wounded. There was an explanation why he wasn't being affected after all, that his original chip has been destroyed.
But Echo has the scar on later in the episode, has the bandage on his head. Which I just thought from the whole point of him being captured, and which we saw in the Clone Wars, and being turned into that basically walking computer for the Separatists, that his chip wouldn't be there. So maybe it was still there and it just wasn't working because of all of the cybernetics inside of him.
Could very well be that there's some way the added electronics work like an inhibitor chip. But
and then of course
it's not explained, and so I'm guessing we won't be knowing for sure how the author thought of it.
And then of course they say that all of them, Tech tells Rex about their deviant nature, not having implemented it. The chips couldn't fully implement, except for Crosshair. Alarmed, Rex says that's where he says, haven't we moved them yet? And then there's a bit more of the conversation around the chip and stuff like that. And then Rex says he's unwilling to bury any more of his brothers. And I'm assuming that's really a reference to the crash ship.
Possible, yeah.
And
he also warns them that if the chip kicks in, there's no way that you're able to stop it.
And that'll be a danger to not just the fellow clones, but Omega as well. Hunter, and then, and his hand is still on, on the gun at this point, or near the gun, as Omega looks to Hunter, who, frowns. And Hunter asks, what they should, how they should take them out. And basically, Rex raises his hand and says, "Good question, and be in touch." And that's where we cut to them basically traveling in hyperspace.
Yeah, and they are en route meeting him on a salvage planet or graveyard planet, whatever you want to call it.
The planet is Braca,
which is basically covered in old pre-Imperial Star Destroyers.
And what's interesting about Braca is that links into Jedi: The Fallen Order, the video game.
Oh yeah, I nearly lost that.
Yeah, it's the planet where Kyle Kastis starts. It's where you begin the game. As Kyle on that planet, basically breaking up.
A few years later.
A few years later, yeah. Or maybe before. Yeah, it's actually not. It's not. I can't remember now where Fallen Order is set, but the exact time
should be a bit later because they meet what's his face again?
Sol Guerrera.
Saul Guerrero, and he's older than
Yeah,
we met him in Clone Wars, but not as old as in Rogue One. So
as in Rogue
it's in
One,
between.
Yeah. So, so yeah, that's where that planet sort of popped up originally. So it's interesting that they've pulled that one to use, but I'm guessing as well it works really well in context of getting onto a ship that's got medical
Yeah, they're basically
facilities.
looking for a frigate that is the same one as the one Rex got his chip removed.
Yeah, which they call Jedi. What's interesting is they call it a Jedi cruiser, the Venetrator
Yeah,
Star
maybe
Destroyers.
they were a special class of Jedi
Mm.
cruisers, or they were simply called that because every clone army had a general that
Yeah.
was a Jedi.
Mm-hmm. But then we get them coming in and landing on the planet, landing in a hangar in the graveyard, and of course we see Rex's Y-wing, which I
Yeah,
thought was quite interesting, which is the same ship that he used to get to get away with. At the end of that, and then they meet up. Wrecker asks how's the jump plans go to help them. Wrexham tells them to follow them all. They put the helmets on. They go out, and then Rex points to the Venetrator. The Venetrator saying, "That's what we need to get on to to get the helmet out." And then Wrecker asks why they've landed so far away from the ship, and then they spot a floating barge which has got the Scrapper Guild on.
yeah, which is a very important piece of information for later on.
It's definitely an important piece of information for later on. So then they, avoiding the Scrapper Guild, start heading to the Star Destroyer.
Yeah, they're basically taking a very long walk over various amounts of scrap metal, and I think the most exciting part of that walk is when they need to cross a big gaping hole inside the Star Destroyer, and yeah, Wrecker falls down.
Wrecker falls down. But what's interesting as well is the little bit before that as well, where they come across some water and Hunter stops.
Yeah, because the water is startled.
And then turns and tells, is it Tech?
I think it's Tech. Stay above the water
stay
line.
above the water, so that foreboding. Anybody?
Anybody who had seen A New Hope actually knows
Yes.
where that is going.
Yeah, I mean we do have other creatures there as well, but it is like yeah. And then they get into the Jedi cruiser and they have to make an improvised race. That's where Wrecker drops down, which is the scene from the trailer.
It
Where
is, yes.
the creature with the basically the garbage creature. I'm assuming it's the same creature.
Yeah, or at least some variant. Because we don't see the gnarly eye looking out of the water.
Yeah, it's a Denoga, I think is how it's pronounced.
Could be.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the trash compactor creature, which they managed to dispatch. But of course, Wrecker is still having his dislike of heights, shall we say?
Which almost every time I think of this garbage compactor creature, it strikes me as, why the fuck would the Empire have such creatures in their garbage disposal? Are they left there on purpose? Or is this something that just is floating through space and attaching itself to wastes?
I think more the fact is it was scooped up in the garbage compactor and stuff. Maybe. It's not said. Let's have a look, see if there's anything mentioned in the Wikipedia thing. It's not really said. They're sentient cephalopods, 7 functions, an eye stalk, mouth, teeth.
Well, I could get it if they were some part of a recycling cycle inside a Star Destroyer that they need to be on every ship, and then that way they also get on every scrapyard.
It's not said, actually. Apart from the fact that they make a quite nice delicacy. This is the thing. Expert chefs can make a grilled Dayonaga into a tasty breakfast dish, but overcooking it would activate the blood parasites in the fatty tissue, destroying the flavor. I'm assuming that's possibly from episode 1, maybe. With with what's his face, the diner
Yeah.
guy. Anyway, so they managed to dispatch it or push it off. But what's interesting is Rex helps Wrecker up helps Wrecker up and quips about makes them miss fighting clankers, which Wrecker agrees to.
Yeah. And then at some point later on, they actually managed to find a medical bay. And again, for some weird reason, there's an energy in the circuitry and
There's
everything
power.
works. They don't need to set up an emergency generator or anything. It all works, which again strikes me as a bit too convenient. But
Residual power in the engine. Let's put it down to that.
yeah, because it hasn't been sitting for 10 odd years and is nearly collapsed under its own weight. But yeah, again.
Yeah.
But let's
But
just
also
say the medical bay maybe has its own built-in batteries for that prolong work hours or something.
Yeah, and then of course we get Tech as the enter the med bay going. Has the quip about that this room is no longer a sterile environment, and then Rex goes, "Yeah, would you prefer the facilities on Camino?"
This is fine.
Yeah, this'll do. This'll make do.
Yeah, and the question, then I think that's the point. Well, we're close to the scene where I can stand up and shout, "Told you so!"
Which bit would that be? Would that be the bit with Wrecker?
That would be the bit where Wrecker, seemingly having more and more to fight his headache, and is getting really annoyed with Tech trying to triangulate the exact position of the chip inside his head, and then he loses it, literally, and is just going, "Good soldiers, follow orders. You're all traitors. You all need to die."
What's interesting is before that as well is there's an interesting thing which I'm sort of picked up on here, which is as the machine's booting up, to do what Tech ends up doing, is Rex tells them that they're lucky since very few clones were immune to the effects of Order 66. So does that mean there are more clones? Well, not more as in a large number, but more clones out there that weren't affected by it.
I'm
Well, we do.
guessing. I'm guessing yes. They're potentially, wounded soldiers who got a bad injury at the side of the head where the chip is implanted. Maybe other clones that have left the forces way before Order 66 has been executed.
But well, we know of two definitely, but well, we don't know if they were unaffected. But we know two clones later on that don't have the chip in, and that's Wolf and Gregor, who we meet in Rebels along with Rex.
Yeah.
So we know at least Commander Wolf and Gregor is the clone commando character that turned up in Clone Wars. Don't have the chips in.
I'm guessing we will be introduced to several of these characters later on in the series.
Well, I'm wondering, and here's one. There's a lot of speculation going around about what's going on with Kenobi and who's turning up in Kenobi and so on and so forth.
Oh, we know there will be stormtroopers.
We know there's stormtroopers. The other rumor, or one of the other rumors, is Cody is going to turn up.
Possible.
Because Cody was, of course, Kenobi's right-hand clone, like Rex was to Anakin. So, does that mean possibly Cody didn't have the chip? Or Cody has the chip and is a good soldier who's following orders?
I think the latter, because the clones under his command opened fire at Kenobi, Obi-Wan when the order was issued, and he didn't act any weird.
True. But it'd be an interesting one to see whether Cody plays into the Bad Batch at all, or any of the other stuff that's going on. It's just a food for thought. But then, of course, back to the whole Wrecker, who sort of the main thing that sets it off apart is the Tech thing, is the whole when he says "good soldiers follow order." I think that was the big giveaway of.
Yeah.
And then him grabbing hold of Tech by the throat. It was like, okay, this is going to go bad very quickly.
Yeah, it's downhill from here, and we're on the sled without any brakes.
Yeah. So there is the fight, basically. I don't think we need to go through the whole fight, other than Rekka occasionally or telling them that they are violated Order 66 and should be terminated.
Yeah, it's basically a big game of fisticuffs. So Wrecker is
Chicken as well.
is hitting them all left, right, and center, sending them to sleep. And then the most interesting thing about this fight is when Omega is making a warning shot and drawing his attention to her,
She
and
shoots him.
he's going after her.
Yeah. And repeats the whole thing. The good soldiers follows orders. He chases her down, so we get the whole cat and mouse thing with Rekka.
At the very end, she's sitting in the corner, frightened, with a gun at the ready, and she could potentially kill him on the spot. But she chooses not to, and at that point, he just raises his arm and I think is about to crush her. And then we hear that very...
No, he's got a gun in his hands. I think he's going to shoot her.
Yeah, and then we have this very well-known stun setting noise and the blue light, and he collapses.
Yeah, the guns of the Blue Rings Brigade, which is how Rex basically stuns him.
Blue Ring of Sleep.
Blue Ring of Sleep, indeed. And then, of course, we get the scene cutting to them, to Rekka being loaded onto the
medical bay,
the medical thing, and as they do the procedure, he's not waking up straight away. And Rex, of course, says he doesn't know because he was on the other side of it.
Yeah.
So he doesn't know
does it need to take this long? I don't know. I've never been on this side of the procedure.
Exactly. And then he's Omega tries to wake him up and he's not responding. That's when Tex checks to see if he's dead, but he's not. His vitals are fine. He's just unconscious. Rex sort of speaks to Hunter away from Omega, telling her, you need to get some air, go take the girl topside. But Omega goes, nope, and pulls a chair.
Yeah, she basically does what you would expect from any good friend or family. She's staying with him. And at some point later, he awakes.
Yep, and tassels her hair, and we get the all the clones basically. Omega's delighted to have him back. Tex scans him, and then Rex turns around and says, 1 down, 3 to go. And that's when it was like, oh, I went, oh, so they are taking Echoes out.
Yeah, better not risk anything.
Yeah, it's possibly partly that, but I just thought that because of being the way he is, because he looks a bit like Lobot from
very much so
from Empire. It's like, really, would the chip be there? Would the Separatists not have possibly removed it? And later we get
I don't think the Separatist would have known about it, and since it's not a chip as we would define a chip, but some sort of biological implant, I don't think it would have appeared on their scans.
Yeah, and then of course we get the sort of the scene, the final scene, sort of in the med bay thing is as Tech comes out of the tunnel, touching his head to his bandage. So does that mean that we're just scanning to make sure the chip was there, or had he been done? It's not said. I'm assuming they were just checking to make sure the chip was completely gone. We get the sort of the reunion of the Martel Mix gang between Rekka sort of reassuring and apologizing to Omega about what happened, that he didn't have any control over it and couldn't stop himself. And Omega says, she understands it's okay, and then,
and she pulls out some candy
because says, it's the end of the mission.
Yeah, we now need some candy, which is the biggest icebreaker ever, having candy.
Yeah, which is then that's how sort of those two celebrate, as we cut to outside where Rex is chatting with someone on his wrist comm, saying they're going to meet them at the rendezvous in the next rotation, and I think that might be Ahsoka.
Very high possibility, yes.
I do think that's Ahsoka, because that would possibly be the only person I think Rex would be willing to...
Either Ahsoka or maybe the other clones he mentioned before that have passed the inhibitor chip, and
it may be the twins as well. It may be the sisters, but I've got a suspicion it's Ahsoka.
Yeah, and
because
then
it leads in nicely of sorts into the fact that Ahsoka knew where Rex was to tell the Ghost crew to go to this planet.
yeah,
So it sounds like Ahsoka and Rex kept in touch during all that sort of that 10-year gap or whatever it was. But it's Rex says he spent, it's basically Hunter and Rex start having a conversation, and this is where Rex isn't really out of the fight, and he says, he spent his life defending the Republic and he can't stop now, denoting that Rex is fighting against the Empire.
yeah.
And then then that's where Hunter points out that it's gone. But
Yeah, I think the way is that Rex is offering them a way to work for the Republic, quote unquote, but Hunter isn't sure that that would be the way that the crew would actually work at the moment, and they would remain working for Sid for the time being. And Rex just says, "Yeah, if you ever need us, or if we would ever need your services, we know where to find you." And then he walks down into the mist, which I personally liked very much as a cinematographic a effect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was more the fact is we know where you are, and if you ever need us, you can call us. Rex
Don't
knows
call
where
us,
to find
we'll
them.
call you.
Yeah, but if you ever need us, please call us and we'll come running. Sort of that sort of duality of the conversation.
Yeah.
And then of course it's the line as well, or the interesting thing is what Hunter says, where he's got to do what's best for the team. Things have changed, and he doesn't mean about the Republic gone, he means about the Bad Batch. Things have changed because they've now got that responsibility of Omega, and that she needs them.
Yeah, and
So he's going to do what's best for the squad.
Is around her.
Mm-hmm. So he's going to do what's best for the squad, not necessarily what's best for the Republic. It's all about the survival of that family dynamic, because it is really a family.
Yeah, at this point,
a little sister with a couple of with some big brothers, really. And then as Rex sort of disappears off, we cut to a long shot of the Scrapper Guild, unknown to the clones, that they've been spotted and that they are to notify the Empire.
They've used the method of, we're looking through some goggles and we see that one clone, and then we take a cut and we see those two on the barge telling, there are clones, tell the Empire.
Yeah. So it's and then
it's going to be interesting. I'm guessing the next job Sid is getting for the Bad Batch will be a trap from the Empire, and Crosshair will be there too.
I think episode 8 is they're going to be fighting on the planet to get off. I think the episode 8 is going to be a continuation of what's went on, so it's not necessarily going to be a trap for the Empire. It's going to be the Empires have turned up and are hunting them.
I think that would be too quick, because we don't know where the Empire is actually at the moment, and the Bad Batch simply needs to walk back to their ship and get off planet.
True, but if the Empire turns up with a Star Destroyer and a Dicta cruiser, it might be a little bit dicey for them. But I think that's where we might end up.
We will see.
We definitely will see on Friday.
Yeah, it's only 6 days away, is it?
It is. The two episodes, good as separates, really good stories, setting up specific things.
Having their highs and lows.
Yeah, as we seem to get with all of the Bad Batch, it's not a constant up down up, a constant up, ratcheting up. There's a ratcheting up, but there is slow moments as well of things.
I think the Bad Batch hasn't had one episode until now that really got me going like, holy fuck, what was that? Opposed to what we had in the 2 seasons of The Mandalorian, where there was more than one episode where I was sitting on the edge of my chair going, holy fuck, what is happening? But I'm guessing that's also accountable because it's a children's show primarily, and I don't think children really need these very tense moments
No,
in their shows. Maybe as a season ending, but not in the middle
I
of the season.
I think as well with the Bad Batch, not necessarily just being an animation, but I think it's the fact of the matter is where it is set. We know how the galaxy is forming, shall we say?
Yeah.
So a lot of the holy shit moments that we got in the Mandalorian, you don't necessarily get because
Yeah,
of
the
the
major surprises aren't coming from offsite because you know who's the Emperor, you know who's Darth Vader, you
yeah.
you know where the general Imperium is heading towards and how the people are working, living with it.
So but as two separate stories, really good as one whole story as well. Because I think you could, as I said before we started recording this, I think you could have possibly you could have had a 40-minute episode out of this and had the both episodes just
I
in one
think
chunk.
I think these would be episodes that, due to the weekly nature, we could appreciate them both.
Mm-hmm.
If you would
Yeah.
to go back and binge watch the whole first season, those two would just blur into one, and you wouldn't be able to, in the after you watched everything, go, yeah, was there another episode?
Which I'll probably do anyway once we've had all 16 episodes.
Yeah, and if it weren't against the terms of service on Twitch or any other streaming platform, I'd make a live watch event with a lot of beer, but that will get copyright claimed the second it goes live, so I'm not going that.
I'm not sure actually, because you don't have to show what you're watching
Yeah,
to
but
show your
where's the
reaction
fun in that?
or have the conversation. You see, you have the conversation, so you have somebody else on who's watching at the same time, and you're talking about the episode.
Yeah, but no.
Yeah, yeah. Twitch would get very upset if we started broadcasting this stuff as well.
Also, I think I need to get a TV license at that point for Germany. But all in all, it's again good entertainment value.
Definitely good entertainment value. There was a bit of gaming news this past week as well that I saw, and I don't know. And this came from a French. They were on YouTube. It was a French channel, the French Star Wars Legion channel, and they were mentioning about the rough release dates for the Yoda and the Wookiees, which is August, which we assumed is probably Gen Con.
Possibly, yeah.
So you're looking August, September for the next load, which is going to include the Fluttercraft, which we haven't seen yet, of course. So it's basically Gen Con onwards. We're getting this final collection of this year's Legion resources.
Yeah, and I'm hoping that at Gen Con we're going to see the first things that Atomic Mass Games is shelling out for Star Wars Legion, X-Wing, and Armada.
And hopefully a 6mm version of Epic Legion as well.
Indeed. Though I'm not keeping my hopes up too high. Especially given the fact that Atomic Mass Games still hasn't updated their homepage, and they are still promoting the event from the beginning of.
Yes, I know. I noticed that, and I did ask them on their stream: are they doing another one of those events before Gen Con?
Let me guess, you didn't get an answer.
I did get an answer actually.
Oh, and they said no.
They said yes.
Oh.
But Gen Con, we're getting into July. We know Gen Con's the September. Is it August, September this year? Because it's a 3-in-1, isn't it? It's like online, face to face, and something else as well, isn't it? It's the whole. Actually, Gen Con is 16th to the 19th of September, and it's a hybrid format. They're saying here, so you've got pop-up Gen Con online, and then you've got a face to face as well.
Yeah, and after that, everybody's getting back into quarantine.
Well, yes. Well, I got my second vaccine today, so I'm now magnetized. I can now get 5G through my teeth, and I'm being tracked by the government. So I'm all good.
Yeah, it's not like we have been tracked by the government before.
Yeah, it's just easier now with the chip in my arm. That's now
they
working.
don't need us to go on mobile every now and again.
No.
They just look at the where is he now?
It's the Suicide Squad moment, you see. So you do something wrong. No, we're not going to do that. We'll just press a button and blow your arm off. There you go.
Yeah, and on that happy note, I
On that
think
happy note, yes,
we
indeed.
should call this a day. We will all see you, or rather, you will hear us again next week when we will have watched the eighth, ninth, eighth episode
Halfway
of
through.
the
It's the
Bad
midpoint.
Batch, and we'll be discussing weird things. Until then, he's Rolf, I'm Tim. Stay safe, stay hydrated, remain indoors. See ya.